because somebody pronounced it as being an important thing. They're trying to create a European superstate. They're going to do it out of fear. Project Fear is not over with the election. Project Fear is alive and well. They're trying to go from Brexit to break it, and we can see where they are putting their power here. We see foreign ministers of France and Germany have revealed a blueprint to effectively do away with individual member states. It has always been about political union. It has not been about even the economics. They begin with a common trade group, and then they use that to push people into a political sovereignty that is distant from them. And they're saying that they're putting this out as an ultimatum. Under the radical proposals, EU countries will lose the right to have their own army, their own criminal law, their own taxation system, their central bank, with all those powers being transferred to Brussels. And again, remember, it was David Cameron who said none of that exists. Oh, but it does. And we have pointed that out multiple times. It was well known to the people who voted, who were baby boomers. They knew where this was coming from. They knew the plan of this. And now we see this being surfacing in the Polish media. They are releasing the details of this. They say the only way to make Europe more than the sum of a member state diplomacies is to make it into a real state. And this is something that even CNN is promoting with a former U.S. ambassador, Christopher Hill. This is on yesterday's Sunday show. Multi-level governance, he said, may be just about satisfactory for managing mountains of butter, but it is barely suitable for making decisions about guns. Yes, it is about world government. It is about creating a European superstate. It is about creating a North American superstate, a North American Union, and consolidating these different groups into a world government. Now you can see it. Now they brag about it, just as they brag about turning our Constitution into a dictatorship, a living document. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the InfoWars Nightly News. I'm Leanne McAdoo, joined by Rob Dew in studio. Now we're going to be taking an in-depth look at a violent rally that took place this weekend in Sacramento. It was kind of a face-off between two extremist groups. Things got pretty violent there. They were each calling each other fascists, but both groups were trying to shut down the opinion of the other with violent means, by any means necessary.
Well, definitely you could say that about the one group. They're actually called By Any Means Necessary, and they went there with the sole intent of shutting down the group, the Traditionalist Worker Party, who basically you could say they're a white Aryan supremacy organization. And they were going to have applied for permits, and they were going to have an event on the steps of the Capitol in Sacramento. And this group, By Any Means Necessary, showed up with sticks, apparently with knives too, because people got stabbed, and a face-off occurred. And they even said, one of their spokespeople actually got up and said in front of the cameras, we're going to take militant direct action, she said, to quote her. And here you can see a young lady, it looks like she's going to get clocked in the head, and she's drug off after a guy just takes a whack at her. Totally ridiculous. And we're not even going to have a war of words at all. We're just going to start beating people up and causing this. Yeah. And this is something that the FBI, I think, thrives in, taking two groups opposing each other and putting them together. And who knows how they're promoted like this. But let's go back to this this one militant, Yvette Falcara. She was interviewed by ABC News, and she uses the words militant direct action several times in the speech. Here's that clip.
Our method is to build a mass militant, integrated, anti-racist and immigrant rights movement. The Nazis and the fascists are dangerous. They need to be stopped and shut down by any means necessary. BAM is building and leading a movement that's committed to building militant, integrated, direct action to shut them down by any means necessary. But that's what it takes. That's what building a mass militant movement takes.
So, Leanne, not only is she advocating direct militant action, she's also a middle school teacher. She teaches at Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School in Berkeley. She's the humanities teacher for the 7th grade.
Wow.
So these are the people, and she took it off her Facebook page.
Educating your children.
Right.
This is why they come out of school, and you're thinking, who are these people?
Where did they learn this stuff? Well, this is their teacher right here. A bandage on her head, obviously got into a scuffle, advocating more violent action against people that they say this is hate speech, we're going to stop it. It doesn't matter, you know, there's no looking at it arbitrarily. It's just, this is hate speech, we're going to attack it. Pretty soon it's going to be if you don't believe the earth is warming because of man, well, that's hate speech and we have to attack you.
Right.
Anything they could say is hate speech, and then they can go ahead and attack it because all they've done is go, hey, it's hate speech, so we're going to go after it.
And the irony here is that we are constantly making the argument that the First Amendment doesn't protect violent hate speech, and yet that's what they're coming to do, is by any means necessary, be violent, be militant.
And it's okay because they're in the right.
Right.
Because they follow Bernie Sanders.
And
because they don't like Trump. It's like anything they could think of, it's, oh, this is
you're
bad.
racist.
We say it's bad. We say it's racist. So now we get to attack it.
Well, and their whole platform is like, it's racist if you don't allow completely open borders. You don't accept the fact that immigrants are here illegally, and they want us to live up to the American ideal, the professed ideals of freedom and equality for all the people that are coming here illegally. And that's insane.
Right. Deporting people is breaking up families. But hey, guess what? If I don't pay my income tax, I go to jail. That's breaking up the family. That's the government doing the same thing. But it's okay because I need to pay my income taxes in order to support this ridiculous socialist utopia that they want.
And speaking of paying taxes, they must have some sort of a 501c3 set up because you can make tax-deductible donations to their organization.
Right. And this lady, Yvette Fokura, she actually had on her Facebook page that she used to work, or she works at this school, and you can find it in their directory. She's listed in their directory as a teacher. So this is a middle school teacher basically advocating violence. Now let's look at the other side. You have this traditionalist party, which it seemed to be led by this man named Matthew Heimbeck. This is a guy who graduated from school in 2013 with a history degree from Townsend WSU, okay? Basically formed a white supremacist group there. He's traveling around. He kind of marries into the legions and tours Eastern Europe and has all these events. Now, he seems to be becoming really prominent in just a few short years.
Right.
The Washington Post has an article about him. Vice has done a profile on him. This guy's getting all the free press he can ask for. And you know, I was watching a video by a guy, his name's Spiro, I believe, with Newsbud, and he came out and started talking about how the FBI works to get these groups to fight each other.
Right.
The FBI has a history of having informants in the Black Panthers, in the Ku Klux Klan, and other white supremacist groups. They like to insert people into these groups as leaders, give them funding, give them money so they don't have to go out and actually work for a living. They can just kind of act as the de facto leader for these groups in order to gear them into areas where you would be creating violence, because the FBI thrives on stuff like this. The government thrives on stuff like this. They want to see groups fighting each other. Now, I'm not saying Matthew Heimbeck is being paid by the FBI or it is an informant. I'm just saying the FBI does have a history of doing this. And you can look at it in anything. They were looking at Omar Mateen, and in fact, they tried to get him into entrap him before he even committed that attack at the gay nightclub in Orlando.
Yes, and we can look. COINTELPRO goes back to the 60s and 70s, of course. Paul Wolf documents it in COINTELPRO, The Untold American Story, and it documents the role that the FBI played in the Ku Klux Klan there. And he writes, however, Bureau intelligence assets were neither neutral observers nor objective investigators, but have been active participants in beatings, bombings, and murders that claim the lives of some 50 civil rights activists. So just like you're saying, that they weren't there to just be silent observers or to maybe make some suggestions of agent provocateurs.
They steer these groups into conflict.
Engaging in the violence and then getting propped up as leaders and public spokespersons for these groups.
Right, and before we get away from that, Richard Okoye, the only Asian American who held a formal leadership position in the Black Panther Party, was exposed as an FBI informant after an FOIA request. So, you know, it can be on both sides. They could be funding both sides. People don't realize this, that they're part of these groups and they may think they're doing it for the best intentions. But the leadership of your groups may be compromised. It may be steering you into places where you don't want to go. And all this is leading up to what's going to happen this summer. You got the DNC and the RNC in Cleveland and in Philadelphia. These are kind of North American, United States Rust Belt cities that don't have good economies, cities that are ripe for the type of rioting that could occur. And you've got, by any means necessary, saying they're going to make that happen. And a lot of their rhetoric in there is geared only towards Donald Trump. Donald Trump hasn't been in this race but less than a year now, just over a year. He's been running for president. He didn't create all the problems.
Exactly.
Okay? He's not the cause of all the racism in the world and all the bigotry and all the open borders, you know. But it's just like this is the only reason for their existence now is to stop Donald Trump.
And talk
it makes
about
you wonder
the leaders.
Who's funding these groups.
Being the leaders being behind the groups, and that's it. It's like channel all of your energy, all of your anger, all of your hatred, all of our resources we're going to go and attack Donald Trump at these protests, these rallies. Meanwhile, all these Bernie supporters, they should have been going after Hillary Clinton and pointing out all of her scandals, but they weren't.
Didn't want to do that.
Their leaders wanted them to target Donald Trump.
Exactly. And that's where it all started in Chicago. And that's one of the hotbeds. So you're going to see, I think Cleveland and Philly are going to be insane hotbeds for what's going to go on this summer. And for the rest, the rest of the presidential race. Anytime Trump makes a speech, there's going to be riots or attacks on people. We saw it all through California. California is just turning into a total hotbed. And that's why you saw this at Sacramento, which incidentally, the last Trump rally, there wasn't much going on. So there was something there stirring the people to conflict at this particular event. So it's really interesting how it just happened to happen magically overnight. They were even attacking camera people. Right. Sacramento Bee had their cameraman and reporter attacked by this group, by the BAM activists.
Right. Well, and also, too, talking about just kind of controlling the agitation here, they knew that at the Trump rally, they're not going to run into your actual white supremacists who are going to show up there with knives, ready to stab and cut people. But at this particular event, they ran into people who were ready for a fight. That's the kind of agitation and noise that they were going to get. Yeah. And that's their whole purpose, is they try to make as much melee as possible in order to bring others into their group. Join us, and you too can be a little
fun. We're gonna have a great time.
Militant.
Look, I got to be on the news with a bloody bandage. This is what it's all about. This is what being American is all about, is causing strife and not looking at the world the way it really is, but looking at the world the way we think it should be and trying to steer it towards that. Incidentally, you could look at Matthew Heimbach's Twitter, and he's got a picture of all the guys with shields ready to go into battle. So they were ready for a fight. The other group was ready for a fight. I don't know who's steering who, but you could tell that there's going to be more clashes like this as we go into this. Finally, we're entering the summer of rage.
Yeah, the summer of rage is upon us. Well, stick around because there's more nightly news coming right up.
Welcome back. Joining me now is Joe Biggs. We're going to talk about the boots on the ground in terms of the chaos that's coming. As we were just talking about the financial chaos, understand immediately as Brexit was passed, we see stock markets, commodity markets dropped and manipulated. And these are the same people now. We see today Standard & Poor's dropped the rating of Great Britain by 2 levels, just like that. And it took forever to try to get them to do anything about the derivatives market that created all the mortgage chaos. So we've got chaos is being created in the financial markets. And we know that our government is now preparing and taking steps to militarily respond to any chaos that may be coming here in terms of food shortages or in terms of economic chaos that they engineer. So, Joe, today we found out a couple of things. We're going to talk about the UN military vehicles, a lot of reports of that in Virginia. But let's start first with this report from Cheryl Atkinson about U.S. soldiers, active duty soldiers, being involved in the smuggling of illegal aliens.
Yeah, so there's an article out that says U.S. authorities are investigating an illegal immigrant smuggling operation run by active duty soldiers out of Fort Bliss. Fort Bliss is where I was stationed last before I got out of the military. That's in El Paso, Texas. And they're saying they caught these 2 soldiers actually passing through the Falfurrias border checkpoint. It's like 125 miles away from McAllen inland. Adon Salazar, Kit Daniels, John Bound, and I have all gone through this checkpoint multiple times. Jakari Jackson, they're down at the border right now looking at the open border and how Obama's allowing these people to come in. And what's going to happen? You're going to get people.
He's not just allowing them. He's begging them to come in. And even when the Supreme Court said, no, you don't have the authority for these programs that you want to do, and you can't stop the deportation of these people, he goes, well, I'm not going to pay attention to the Supreme Court.
You get a lot of soldiers that join the military, and they come in, they work hard for a while, and they try to act like good, upstanding soldiers. But a lot of them come from really bad backgrounds. A lot of them do come over from cartel areas. A lot of them have family that are in gangs. And a lot of them come in and they play that upstanding soldier part for a few years. And then once they get in there and they get enough rank, they understand the system, how it works, and they're going to manipulate it. We've seen that with weapons. We've seen that with drugs. We've seen it all kinds of stuff. And now we have these guys who are actually bringing in Mexican citizens and smuggling them into the country.
Of course they're going to do people. They run drugs back and forth. And of course it was our government under George Bush as well as Obama that was doing the gun walking, the fast and furious, to try to create a false flag to come after the Second Amendment. But they do drugs, and they've been doing drugs back and forth across the border because it's corruption. And it isn't even guys who, as you pointed out, are coming in because they want to go into the military, want to do the right thing. I mean, we've got people who are Ivy Leaguers who come in and run these banks, and they give El Chapo his own personal money laundering window at HSBC. I mean, that's simply a fact. And then they know